Good morning, class, and welcome to this week's lecture, right, on education. So this week we're going to be talking about something that is very close to what you guys know of, right, because you guys are working on your education. Now, as many of us know, and if we are following along with the elections, which are next week, we know that there are many issues, many propositions that have to do with education. As we know, as we're maybe taught when we're little, right, is that we all have to go to college, that we all have to go to school when we graduate from high school so that we can focus on a trade, on a vocation, on a career, that we attend school with further education so that we are set when we begin our careers, our jobs that we have in the future. Now, we're going to have the discussion this week as well is, do you have to go to college in order to be successful in life? And that is one of the questions that we'll be discussing in discussion this week, because there are many professions that does not require for you to have a college education and are seen as very respectable jobs that pay very well. My brother works for UPS, has been a driver for many years, and he makes more than I do, and I have my master's degree, and I teach at a college, right? So again, depending on the career, depending on the vocation, what you study, you may or may not need college education. Again, that doesn't mean that I'm having you guys all, like, drop the course right now, right? And so, like, I'm not going to school, right? But again, you know, it seems that we need to teach in our school systems, especially at a younger age. I personally believe that, again, you know, maybe college isn't exactly for everyone, right? But that does not mean that you cannot be successful if you don't go to school. So the functions of education, they create good and effective citizens. Now you think about it, from the first day of school, looking back to elementary, right? I have two kids in elementary. On the first day of school, if you ask any child, what did you learn today? They're going to say, oh, we learned the rules of the classroom. We have to raise our hands if we have questions. We're not allowed to run. We're not allowed to be on the grass. We have to walk on the pavement. We have to do these rules. I volunteer in my kids' classrooms, and every time I step on, or the other day I stepped on the paved rock, and 3 kids started yelling at me, oh, you can't do that, Miss White. We're not allowed to step on the paved rocks. We're not allowed to. You're going to get in trouble, right? So what is that teaching our kids? Again, this is teaching our kids, right, responsibility, the norms, the rules as to what's going to carry on when we're older kids, right? The teacher's not going to sit there on the first day of school and say, okay, if you have a question, you're going to raise your hand, because this is going to be helpful in the real world when you guys are adults and you're at work and all of a sudden you guys, your boss is talking to you and you interrupt them. That is not right, right? No, this is something that carries on with us. It's kind of like this unspoken, you know, we don't sit and think about it and dwell on it, like, am I supposed to raise my hand during this meeting, or can I just blurt something out, right? So again, we're learning the different roles, you know, how to socialize, how to speak to other people, their communication skills, right? In addition to math, and reading and writing, that of course, as we know, is going to be very important in the future, unless you have a calculator. And thank goodness that the calculator was invented, because let me tell you, anyone that knows me, I love my calculator, right? So attainment and payoff. So the higher the level of education, the higher the reported happiness and satisfaction with life. This is according to your textbook, right? There's a direct correlation between education and voter participation. That's actually really funny because, you know, again, going into the election next week, you know, I know many individuals that have, you know, education, and the way they're voting, you know, they're voting in a very completely different way than maybe someone that is not educated. Someone that is educated, and the reason that they say this, because someone that is educated is more likely to sit in research. the various propositions, or is more likely to, say, for example, look into different candidates, really evaluate, really try to, pinpoint, what does this candidate stand for, whereas this candidate doesn't. So maybe someone that is educated is more likely to put more process and thought, I should say, in terms of voting, whereas maybe someone that is not educated, and that's not to say that people that are not educated, that have not gone to school, are not able to make good decisions in terms of, voter participation, or even being happy and satisfied with their life, right? But when you look at statistics and you see the averages, this is what we see. There's a strong relationship between level in education and income. Again, depending on which line of work you're going into, that can be true. I have a friend that has a PhD, and she works at Starbucks to supplement her income in order to receive benefits and also retirement, because she is only working as a part-time adjunct instructor. Now, what's that to say? Again, she reached the highest attainment, right? The highest level of education, which is a PhD. But in this circumstance, right, therefore we see that there is not a strong correlation between education and income. Here is the earnings and employment rates by educational attainment in 2015. So we're starting to see. Educational attainment refers to the highest level of education that an individual has completed. So this is distinct from the level of schooling that an individual is attending. So here, if you go on the link, you'll see that it links you to the census in terms of educational attainment. The atmosphere of learning or surviving, education is boring. Some people would say that sitting in a traditional classroom is boring. What if you're a student, that needs to be visually, you're a visual learner and everything is an instructor that's just talking, monotone. Some may say that, there is, that it's not as exciting. This week in discussion, I'll be bringing in a link of parents that are trying to make education not boring, but teaching in a very non-traditional setting, and I'll bring that into discussion. The atmosphere of fear we're starting to see, as we know, years back, we've seen that there's a lot of crime, that there is, there are lockdowns in schools, there are shootings in schools that we hear of. So a lot of parents get very fearful, and after Columbine, we saw that many parents started pulling their kids out of the classroom and into the home as homeschoolers. That's something that we'll also discuss in discussion, is the amount of crime and violence. It has decreased from the early 1990s, and we're going to see why that is. The ritualized deprivation is the school atmosphere in which the motions of teaching and learning continue. Most likely located in the urban ghetto or other dominantly low-income areas. A great training robbery. So over a lifetime, total income of those with a bachelor's degree will double those with only a high school diploma. Now, one of the stories that was running not too long ago was in a discussion. The discussion was that should we allow community colleges to have bachelor programs. That is to say that you could earn your bachelor's degree in the community college setting. And a lot of people were saying yes, because that'd be wonderful, especially if you don't want to leave your hometown, for example. Maybe at Taft, maybe at BC. It would be very beneficial, right, to get a bachelor's degree. Now, one of the issues that I like to bring up is what happens when the bachelor's degree is readily available to everyone, right? Think of the high school diploma. High school diploma at one point in time was seen to be prestigious. If you wanted to get a job at a fast food restaurant, you had to show that you were a high school graduate, right? You had to have that paper verifying, right, that achievement. What's going to happen when so many people receive a bachelor's degree? The bachelor's degree is then going to be seen the same way as a high school diploma. Then all of a sudden we're going to start saying, right, that the value is going to go down in the bachelor's degree. Then we're going to want to be achieving to getting our master's degree, to getting our PhD degrees, right? So we have to see the value in the various degrees that we get. So a tied in mediocrity, there exists a dangerous mismatch between what students need and what they get in colleges, right? So all these different college courses. I don't know about you guys, but when I left for college and I saw that there are so many different disciplines, there's geography, there was besides psychology, because I went in as a psych major, sociology, there's religious studies, there was women's studies, there was, so many different disciplines, so many courses, right? I remember taking art history courses, and I fell in love with art history. I actually got my minor in art history, and I remember my parents telling me, what's the point of you taking all those classes? That's just such a waste of time. That's such a waste of money in you taking those classes when you should be focusing on what you're going to be, what you're going to be teaching when you graduate college and, if and when, you decide what career you're going to go into, right? So, there gets to be that discussion of, are we taking a lot of classes in college where we see that we never use it in our daily lives, right? The social class, family background, and educational inequality. If you go down the list, right, we're going to see that there are inequalities in education for various reasons. The organization of education, children who are disadvantaged by their social background when they enter school becomes even more disadvantaged as they progress through schools. So the quality of teaching, we're starting to see, at one point, this is something that students always bring up in classes that, unfortunately, they went through school with having some really bad teachers. I had one college student say that she had a college professor where the professor did not grade anything and just pretty much did what they pleased and graded, weeks later or months later, and students would ask about grades and we're told, I don't have any grades right now, and quality of teaching was not there, right? And they would, say, well, I'm going to report you to the dean. Well, go ahead because I have tenure. I can't get fired, right? So that quality of teaching where, are the instructors that we have, the teachers, our professors, are they there to teach, because they love it, or because they're there for the paycheck? Instructors that are teaching subjects for which they're not trained. What if you have a math teacher teaching geography, or have a sociologist teaching mathematics, for example, right? I can tell you this, that if I were teaching math, all of you guys would fail because I would not even know what I'm doing, right? So again, we're starting to see that, sometimes there's a shortage of teachers, and so maybe we're putting them in classrooms where they're not specifically trained. The politics of school financing, right? Again, with the propositions that are on the ballot next week, we're always talking about funding for the schools, funding for the schools, funding for the schools. But I don't know if many of you guys are aware, but the schools receive a lot of money, right? A lot of money that come from the state, that come, from the federal government. So it's very interesting to see, right, that we're still pushing all this money to go towards education, okay? Economics of education. A survey found that 68% of elementary teachers had students who were promoted to the next grade even if they failed the class. This is very difficult because as we grow older, right, we're supposed to build our foundation, our steps, so that we're able to understand and comprehend and articulate what we're learning year after year, beginning from transitional kindergarten all the way to high school graduation. We have many high school graduates. We have many college students that do not know how to write complete sentences, or that do not know how to read, or do not know how to comprehend the material. So it becomes very, very difficult, because are we just passing our kids just to pass them up? Because, you know, if they're in 8 years old, then they should go into this grade, right? Or are we hurting them in the future by not having them fail their classes, by not having them repeat a course? You know, many people would say, well, you can't fail someone because how about their peers? If they're going to be bullied, saying like, oh, you failed the 3rd grade, oh, you get to do it again, you're so dumb, right? So we have that whole aspect of bullying. We have that whole aspect of, you know, the image of what that child is going to be going through, going, oh my gosh, I just did this last year, I'm doing this again. But is there a reason why they're there again, right? So should we fail students, not only within the elementary system, right, high school system, but also in college, right? So social, psychological factors, there's the various attitudes that we have towards learning, as well as the various values that we have. Racial and ethnic group achievement means of the 6th grade pupils. And then public policy and private action. These are charter schools, these are voucher programs, these are children, you know, that are brought up in a different way. Again, I'll be discussing more of this in our discussion this week. And then the last slide that I have is school bullies, because as we know, bullying in schools has always been around, but again, due to media, right, being able to go FaceTime Live and being able to post it on your Instagram and your Twitter, right, we see that it's more prevalent now. So here is a story about a 2nd grader that was pepper sprayed by the police. You would think 2nd grade, that is, you know, a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, you know, is this too dramatic for a 2nd grader to be pepper sprayed? And then my kid would never bully. This is a video that places parents watching their kids in certain scenarios that are acted by young adults, in terms of parents saying like, oh, I raised my child to be nice to everyone. And then what happens when you actually see your child in action? Is that true, the way you say, right? You know, do they learn from what you're teaching them, or do they just smile and not say like, oh yeah, I'll be nice to everyone, but behind you they act a certain way, right? So I hope you guys do enjoy this week's topic on education. Please do not forget that you guys do have a news reflection due by the end of this week on Sunday. If you guys have any questions, please email me. If you need a refresher on your news reflection, refer to your week 1 module, where there is the examples as well as the instructions. Okay, you guys, enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.